Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Board public meeting, December 5th, 2019. Please join me in a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised this meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, otherwise known as the Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2019 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspapers, Township Clerk, and posted on the bulletin board here at the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Senator, Mr. Weinstein and Mr. Dev are absent. Mr. Scobo?
Here.
Mr. Keeson?
Present.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Hashtag?
Here.
Committeeman Lenapi?
Here.
Mayor Delacroix?
Here.
Vice Chair Julian?
Here.
Chair Sriracha?
Here. First up, we have considerations of meeting minutes. First up is the July 11th, 2019 meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
The eligible members, Mr. Chairman, are yourself, Mr. Julian, Mayor Delacroix, Mr. Wagner, Committeeman Lapani.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 11th, 2019 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, any comments from the dais? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Committeeman Lenapi?
Yes.
Mayor Delacroix?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sriracha?
Yes. Next, November 7th, 2019 meeting minutes.
Eligible members, Mr. Chairman, are Mr. Wagner, yourself, Mr. Julian, Mr. Scobo, and Mr. Hashtag.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any comments from the
Second.
dais? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Scobo?
Yes.
Mr. Keeson?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Hashtag?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sriracha?
Yes. We don't have any resolution considerations, no planning board business, so I will open it up to business from the floor for items that are not on this evening's agenda, if there's anything that you would like to address the board. I see no one, so we're moving on. No consideration of ordinances, so we will now go to applications.
Mr. Chairman, we would ask for a flipping of the agenda and to start with the New Jersey American Water application.
Okay, if everyone's in agreement?
Yeah.
I see a lot of nodding heads, so invite New Jersey American Water.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Frank Tedesco.
Council,
Get in the mic.
into the mic.
Right. Our mic does not have
And it
long
doesn't-
range.
So just make yourself comfortable, get yourself close to the mic, because the man behind me with the earphones on is the only one talking to show here.
Good evening, members of the board. I apologize for that. I'm Frank Tedesco. I'm an attorney for the New Jersey American Water. I work with the firm of Dilworth Paxson, which is located in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. We have been here before this board on numerous occasions. This evening, we're before the board on a site plan application for, obviously, the facility that's located at block 200.06, lot 25. It's 120 Radar Boulevard. The zoning is GA. The lot is approximately 15 acres, and essentially it is has a drainage basin, buildings, and the plant that some of the work is done for throughout this area.
Mr. Tedesco, you need to just speak into the mic, please.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. This evening, there are basically three issues that we'd like the board's consideration. One is the construction of 3 new 10 by 10 sheds or buildings equipped with a sink and a toilet for training purposes only. The issue with respect to that is in order to train these individuals to go into someone else's house to fix and or install systems, they need to be able to do that without and have to be trained. So the request is for 3 of those. There's a sink and a toilet for training purposes only. The second request is an above-ground ductile iron pipe, which will be embedded below the ground to permit the trainees to be able to work, for want of a better word, in the hole as they're either removing or installing the new pipe. And the third issue is the request to construct a 10-foot by 26-foot covered patio for the employees' use during these training sessions. We have with us this evening two individuals that will speak, one from New Jersey American Water and another from the engineering company who is the professional engineer. So we'd like to move forward with that unless the body has any other questions on my introduction.
Mr. Chairman, just a note, the applicant is requesting certain submission waivers, waiver of a community impact statement, waiver of an environmental impact statement, and a waiver for applying to NJDEP for an LOI for wetlands. Would you please address those at some point?
Okay, I'll have the engineer do that.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess swear you in.
I gotta swear you in, all right?
State your
Would you like to?
Yeah.
Do you swear any testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you do me a favor and state your name, spell it?
Nick Sizanenko, S like Sam, Y, Z like zebra, O, N like Nancy, E-N-K-O.
Nick, please identify for the board your position with New Jersey American Water and your position also with respect to this particular project that we're before the board for.
Like I said, my name is Nick Sizanenko. I'm an engineering project manager with New Jersey American Water.
Is that turned on?
It is, you just got to speak up a little bit.
I've been with the company about eight years. Prior to joining the engineering department, I spent 6 years in operations, so I am also very familiar with the operations side of it. These training facilities is an enhancement.
Could you provide your credentials, please?
I'm an engineering project manager.
Okay,
with-
education?
I have an engineering degree from Rutgers University.
Okay, any licenses?
No,
Okay. Have you ever appeared before?
No.
Planning boards? This is your first one?
first one.
You need a sticker.
We do have a
No,
professional
it's
engineer.
No, it's all
Breaking
good.
in.
Please proceed.
So these training grounds are going to be an enhancement to 2 training classes which we currently offer to new field employees throughout the year.
Okay.
We have 2 classes in the spring and 2 classes in the fall, one each for road workers who work in the hole, repairing the mains, and for a second class for field service reps who are the ones who come to your house, change your meter, help you address issues. If you think you have a faulty meter, they help you possibly find leaks and such. And that's what the purpose of these sheds above ground is, to help simulate the FSR coming to your house so they can approach, knock on the door, introduce themselves. Each shed will have a variety of different scenarios that the FSRs will find in the field, whether the meter is outside in a pit or inside, possibly in a cramped space. And then the purpose of the toilets and the sinks is to help simulate leaks so that they can help customers find leaks.
With respect to the number of people, can you give an idea as to the number of people that will be there on any given day participating in the training sessions?
Generally, we average 10 to 15 people per class. Like I said, 2
How
classes.
long does the class last?
The class is 5 days long, time-wise approximately 8:30 to 3:30.
And again, how many training sessions over the course of the entire year?
There are 2 training classes in the spring and 2 training classes in the fall.
Okay. That's all we have as to the presentation for what we're going to do here and why it's not necessary.
Okay. Any questions from the board members?
Just what happens when they're not being used for training purposes?
They'll mostly be locked up. They are behind our gated entrance.
Okay.
But the sheds themselves would be locked as well to keep anybody from just wandering in there, even if they are on site.
Anyone else with questions? Dave?
I'm not sure if it's for this witness or not, but we have a few questions regarding the operation. First, will there be any new lighting added to this, or is that for another witness? Next.
There's no new lighting.
No lighting, okay. Any additional vehicles or equipment stored in the area that would be part of this?
With the exception of minimal training materials, there won't be any additional
And
material or vehicles.
Parking, you said there's 15 people per class?
10 to 15 people per class, so which is not an increase over the amount of people we currently have for these classes. So there's adequate.
So you're saying there are that many people on site currently?
Yes.
Okay, so it wouldn't be, in your opinion, a need for additional parking as a result of these training sheds?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Bob? Nothing? Okay, so I guess I will have a motion to open to public.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, if there's anyone from the public that would like to question this witness's testimony, please come forward. Okay. No takers, so, thank you.
May we call our next witness?
Yes, please.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, folks. My name's Peter Chandler. I'm the civil engineer for the project, and I'm here from Suburban Consulting Engineers. My address is 11 Green Hill Road, Chester, New Jersey.
How long is
Wait, wait, so swear him in first. Yeah.
Do you swear any testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you just spell your last name?
Chandler.
how many, you're a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
And for how long have you been so licensed?
I've been licensed since 2001.
Okay. And have you appeared before planning and zoning boards in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, many times.
Could you estimate how many times?
50.
And you are familiar with the New Jersey American Water Project, and did you participate in drafting the documents that you're going to submit this evening?
Yes, I did.
We offer this individual as an expert witness.
Okay, unless there's any objections, we will accept your credentials, and you may proceed.
You might want to put it on the, yeah, thank you. The reason for that is that the television can capture it.
So again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Chandler. I'm here from Suburban Consulting Engineers to represent the applicant, New Jersey American Water, for the addition of this minor site plan application for the addition of 3 sheds and some appurtenances to go with them on the property. Property's lot 25, block 200.06. It fronts on Raider Boulevard, and it's located in the GA zone.
Do we need a mic, please?
Mr. Chandler, do you intend to mark these as exhibits?
These plans are-
Certainly. All sheets? A1 through A9?
Yeah. And I would, or you can, yeah, A1 through A9, I would indicate when you mark them exactly what they represent, and have they been previously provided to the board?
Yes, so what we've got here for exhibits tonight are the site plans prepared by my firm. It's a 9-sheet set of the property and the proposed improvements. I'll mark them as exhibits A1 through A9 as instructed, and all materials were previously submitted to the township.
What's the date on the sheets?
The plans are dated October 1st, 2019.
As you mark them, can you indicate for the record exactly what they represent?
Sure. Exhibit A1 will be sheet 1 of 9. That's a cover sheet of the set. Exhibit A2 will be sheet 2 of 9. That's the legend, general notes, and zoning page. Exhibit A3 will be sheet 3 of 9 of the set. That's the existing conditions and demolition plan. Exhibit A4 will be sheet 4 of 9. That's the site layout plan. Exhibit A5 will be sheet 5 of 9. That's the grading, landscape, and utility plan. Exhibit A6 will be sheet 6 of 9 of the set, and that's the soil erosion plan. Exhibit A7 will be sheet 7 of 9. That's the soil erosion notes and detail sheet. Exhibit A8 will be sheet 8 of 9. That's the construction details, page 1. And Exhibit A9 will be sheet 9 of 9. That's a construction details sheet, page 2. Okay. So I'm now looking at Exhibit A4, the site layout plan, and what this plan shows is the view of the facility with Raider Boulevard on the southern edge of the property, and then it has 2 access driveways, one located to the eastern side, which accesses the parking lot and will provide access to the proposed facilities, and a second one on the western side of the lot coming off of Raider Boulevard, which accesses a small parking lot to the operations facility. The existing facility has a decent amount of development already on it. It has an operations building on the southwest corner with a warehouse facility. A little bit further to the north in the central portion of the western side of the lot is the truck port where the vehicles are kept. They have some storage bins for raw materials at the rear of the site, and then the proposed facilities are located basically in the center of the property. To the eastern side of the site is the detention facility, which is a large at-grade detention pond.
Mr. Chandler, can you do your descriptions on the other side of the drawings, or at least
Sure.
center it so that you're not in the way of the
Sorry, blocking the
people who have nothing to do later in life but watch this.
I apologize. So again, the proposed facilities are located in the center of the site here, adjacent to the existing parking lot. There will be an at-grade driveway access with a gravel driveway running in and behind the sheds. The 3 proposed sheds are here in series, in parallel with the pavement, and then a pavilion, a covered pavilion area here to the north end of the proposed facilities. There'll also be a new concrete pad located on the south side of the proposed sheds where the above-grade section of the pipe will be for training purposes. There's minimal grading involved in this project. The facility is essentially already in a developed condition, and just minor disturbance will be needed to get the sheds and the surrounding materials put into place. No disturbance of the existing stormwater facilities is proposed. There's also no proposed new infrastructure in the way of stormwater facilities. In total, the project is adding 0.09 acres of additional impervious cover, which after we did an analysis of that using software, it did not change the runoff flows going to the basin from the existing to the proposed conditions, which fits the definition of a de minimis change or a small enough change that it would be considered minor in nature. The total disturbance on the lot is 0.24 acres. And that's essentially what we're proposing. We did request, I do remember, there was a request to describe the waiver requests that we had accompanied with the application. We did put in for waiver requests for community impact statement and an environmental impact statement. Again, due to the de minimis nature of the application, it's located in the center of a previously developed site. There's no impacts to any of the existing infrastructure or the surrounding properties. There's no additional utility loadings because of the proposed conditions. So therefore, we figured that was a de minimis condition, and the waiver requests were justified for that. As far as the waiver request for the letter of interpretation, there are some wetlands located on the northern fringe of the property, the northeast corner of the property. The proposed facilities are well beyond the regulated limits which require a maximum of 150 feet from the wetland. Our proposed facilities are over 300 feet, so we're more than twice as far as the most stringent wetland condition would impose. Therefore, it's not going to be in any regulated areas, so we thought the waiver request to get a letter of interpretation was justified as well.
I just have one question. So obviously these training buildings are going to have live water to it, so the water is being brought in from where from the street, from the building?
They're extending the water main that is currently on the property, and it's feeding a proposed hydrant to the east of the proposed sheds, which again would be used for training exercises, and then tees are coming off of that and individually feeding the sheds where there'll be sinks and toilets in there for the employees to perform training exercises on.
And that'll be tied into the sewers, the wastewater?
It's being discharged into the storm system because it's not going to be used for bathroom exercises,
So
just for training.
Clean water flushed out?
I'm sorry, sir?
Fresh, clean water just flushed out into the system?
Correct.
Thank you.
Just have one question too. I know in the Environmental Commission, we talked about 15 trees to be installed to buffer the area from Raider Boulevard.
Correct.
I could be wrong, but I think I only counted 14 on the drawings. On page 5 of 9, and I think there was another depiction. On page 6 of 9. Could you just double check that?
I'm now looking at Exhibit A5, the grading landscape and utility plan, and there are 14 proposed trees, not 15.
So
Those are located in two locations here on this landscaped island in the center of the parking lot and to the south of the proposed facilities, and also in a linear fashion parallel with Raider Boulevard over here to the east of the entrance drive.
So just for the record, we'll make a correction to the Environmental Commission letter. It's 14. It says 15, but it should be 14. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chandler, have you had a chance to review my engineering letter dated November 20th?
Yes, sir.
Most of the comments are technical in nature. Do you have any issues with complying with those?
No.
Thank you.
Anyone? Any additional questions from the dais? Any questions from the public of this witness, of this testimony? Please come up. There are none. Thank you. Counselor?
We have presented the technicalities that we need, we believe we need. The open board has the ability to provide us with an approval.
Speak into the microphone a little closer, please. Thank you.
We would request that the board review this this evening and provide an approval so that the New Jersey American Water can start this project, get it done as quickly as possible for the spring season.
Okay.
I'll move the application.
Okay, Counselor, resolution here?
The application is a resolution to approve New Jersey American Water, file number 19PB19SP, block 200.06, lot 25, formerly lot 2.02, to grant minor site plan approval to construct 3 training sheds, a 6-inch ductile iron training pipe, below-grade water services to the training facility, water meter with backflow preventer, concrete patio with covered gathering area, landscaping, and the waivers requested for the LOI, the environmental, and the community impact statement, as well as all agreements and conditions discussed before the board hearing.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have a motion and a second. Are there any final comments from the dais? Okay, otherwise, roll call, please.
Mr. Scobell?
Yes.
Mr. Pease?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Hashtag?
Yes.
Chairman Lapani?
Yes.
Mayor Delport?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sarachi?
Yes.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Gentlemen, we appreciate your time.
Okay. Feeling good? Okay. So next up will be CP East Brunswick, file number 19-PB-20-INF.
You know the routine, Michael.
Nobody's ever accused me of being too quiet, so.
And we deeply appreciate that.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mike Ogrodnik. I'm an attorney at Sabo, Shaw, Gillespie, Ogrodnik, and Fisher. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, CP East Brunswick Incorporated. So we're here tonight for a project in the Town Center TC zone. And the TC zone requires an informal review before the planning board before submitting any site plans. This subject property is a 3.84 acre lot, which has an existing 6,300 square foot Bank of America building on the south end, and of course is adjacent to the Shell gas station property to the north. This application proposes construction of 2 buildings with a mix of office and retail uses as required by the zone. With retail on the first floor and office on the second floor. These are elevated buildings. Site, as you I'm sure are aware, has frontage on both Amwell and Route 206, has 2 driveway entrances on those roadways, and has the site has a cross-access easement connecting Lot 3.01 to Lot 2. We have submitted some architectural elevations, and we have supplemented some renderings that you can see on the screen tonight. The first proposed building is 5,562 square feet. Building number 2 is proposed to be approximately 4,599 square feet. The applicant proposes 46 new parking spaces, and Lot 2 would be connected to Lot 3.01 via a newly constructed drive aisle. Initial variances in the conceptual have been identified for maximum front yard setbacks. As we know, this zone limits or requires a 5 foot off of the right-of-way, where we have 15 feet proposed. And due to the somewhat awkward shape of this lot, there is a 125 foot wide lot area where 150 foot is required by ordinance. And although this is just an informal concept plan, variances have been raised for, again, those setbacks and the lot width, certain buffering requirements towards the historic Shell station use, as well as parking lot and screening, as well as parking space locations, which will probably be further addressed in a revised and formal application. This project, we feel, is very unique architecturally and proposes a stone clock tower, and our architect will get into his vision on some of the design elements. We have Conrad Roncati Jr., who is our architect, and we have John Hughes on behalf of the Seisner Properties, who's ultimately the developer of this. We also have, of course, Mike Ford, our civil engineer, to explain the site plan. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Hughes to kind of go over the vision for this project. I know he's a Hillsborough resident, and his mother-in-law and mom are as well. Probably could walk here from to their house from here. So I'd like to swear in all our witnesses, or one at a time, to provide just some brief overview testimony, some brief civil engineering testimony, and some architectural testimony.
Is that brief as defined by a lawyer, or is that brief as defined by a
Brief as defined by me.
Okay. You're going to need the mic.
Yeah, so you
You swear in, right? You swear in testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you just spell your last name for me?
Hughes, Hughes.
Go ahead. Mr. Hughes, can you just describe what your role is with Seisner Properties, and what your role is with respect to this particular proposal?
I was initially the Director of Maintenance at Seisner Properties. I am going to be the project manager for this particular project. We are looking to put two beautiful retail building, mixed-use buildings here.
What's your time frames for this, for the construction schedule, if this board were to so approve a minor site plan?
As soon as possible. I mean, this lot has been sitting here since I went to high school, up the road, down Amwell Road for class of 2005, and I remember thinking, what's going to go here? I know that there's been a lot of development in the town center here, and I know that the town has a vision for the main intersection here. We'd like to help the town get that vision moving forward, and this application, as you'll see, has tremendous aesthetic appeal, and I think it fits with the town's vision. And again, we'd like to get the town's input and proceed as soon as possible.
And this application is for two buildings and a clock tower, and how many retail units would be on the first floor of each building?
Each building would have 3 retail units on the first floor, 2 offices available on the top floors.
Okay. Unless there's any questions on behalf of the applicant, I would ask to introduce our next witness.
Mr. Ford change the scenery. Unless that's going to be the view.
Should I open up to the public? Should we open to the public? Yeah, so,
Unless the board has any questions of this witness, while this is an informal, to the extent board wants to open it up, if anybody wants to question, yes.
okay.
With the understanding this is an informal application,
Right.
and that what you may see here tonight may not necessarily be what finds its way to a complete application in the future.
If I just might add to that, anything that's said either in commentary by the board or by the applicant is non-binding. It's, as Mr. Bernstein said, is totally informal, so it's just it's a discussion. Nothing that's said tonight would be binding on the final application.
Okay. If there's no comments from the dais, propose motion to open to public?
I just have one question. So
Okay.
obviously, you're in possession of this property now, you own it and ready to build on it?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Motion open.
Motion open.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. If there's anyone from the public that would like to question, of course.
Hi, Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. I had one question about this on that patio that you have, which I guess is designed to be sort of a restaurant. The question that came up amongst members of the public this week was, why would they put an outdoor eating area on Route 206 instead of on the other end of the building?
I believe the outdoor eating area conforms to the town's vision for a Main Street town center area that's lively and walkable, and their future vision to have parking along 206 and an attractive frontage street side to the retail use as well.
And just with the understanding that 206 today is not the vision for 206 down the road, so.
And Mr. Ford has prepared an exhibit that looks forward to the final streetscape elevations and landscapes, so we will have that as an exhibit shortly.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. My next witness is Mike Ford from Van Cleef Engineering Associates. Mr. Ford?
Swear the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Could you state and spell your name for me?
Michael Ford, F-O-R-D, with Van Cleef Engineering, 32 Brower Lane, Hillsborough, New Jersey.
It's informal.
It's informal. And I hear it's all about the architecture, so, and I'm the engineer. We're not interested in stormwater. So the architect will speak to this first exhibit. This is an illustration, but this perspective is the view from Route 206. I'll go to an engineering exhibit next. Well, let's just an overview. Here's the existing conditions. Amwell Road is at the top of the page, 206 is at the bottom. The 1 acre properties highlighted in yellow. To the right of the property is the gas station at the intersection of Amwell Road and 206, and to the left of the property or to the left side of the sheet is the existing Bank of America. And then just beyond the Bank of America, you start to see the sea of parking by the Bottle King site. Proposed condition is the next exhibit. Access driveways from both Route 206 and Amwell Road, with parking circulating through the property with 2 buildings, building 1 and 2, one fronting Amwell Road, one fronting Route 206. And that perspective you just saw at the very beginning is basically from that access driveway that I'm highlighting with the cursor at 206. And then going on to the vision of 206 and Amwell Road, this exhibit illustrates the conversion of Route 206 to Main Street with Landscape Boulevard down the middle, 1 through lane, both north and southbound on Main Street, and then immediately adjacent to that are bike lanes, and then along the curbside is parallel parking with sidewalks immediately adjacent to the parallel parking. And then you see in this case, we do propose that outdoor seating area, what's envisioned is an ice cream shop. The awning is attached to the building. The architect will speak to that. And we've pushed that building up about as close as we can to the existing right-of-way. And there was a suggestion in one of the review comments, this is kind of an awkward situation where the existing right-of-way limits of the subject site are stepped back from the existing right-of-way of the frontage of either lot on either side of us, both the gas station and the bank. And it was a recommendation that we go to DOT and see if they're willing to vacate any of that right-of-way so that we could gain more property and push the building even closer to Route 206, and we could ask that question of the state.
Mike, was there consideration to having the whole building front, kind of flipping it,
The,
quarter turn,
I could let the
or
architect.
L-shaping one?
Right. The trouble is with this property, we're 125 feet wide, so it's really not that wide of a property. In order to provide adequate parking, the parking really wants to be parallel to the, side property lines. And to get efficient parking, you need the parking on either side of the access aisle. So it really it's really the site access and the parking that kind of, I think, backed into where the buildings are and how they're configured. One of the other focal points, and we recognize that, in fact, the owner applicant is, got other retail establishments and understands that that would even be an advantage from a visibility standpoint, more frontage. One of the things they proposed as part of the application to try to enhance and I'll say counteract that, fact that the long side of the building is facing into the property is providing a focal point in the middle of the site. That is a clock tower with pedestrian access that would circulate between the two buildings, actually through the clock tower. So that's the thought process and planning that went behind where we're at. We do also, just again, boring engineering, I guess. We do propose a driveway connection to the existing driveway on the Bank of America site that would provide for vehicular connection point between our site and Bank of America, albeit this is the exit for the drive-through lanes at the bank. So right now it's one way back to the Bottle King site. So vehicles from our site could get to the Bottle King site directly through that driveway. Vehicles from the bank site would have to circulate through the drive-through and then could either exit the drive-through, make a left and head to Bottle King, or a right to our site. And then even south of us, there's that same potential connection with the vehicles in the Bottle King parking lot circulating through the drive-through at the bank, the pass-by drive line and into our site. So there's that potential for that connection, and that's, again, one of the elements within the town center zone that, encourages that cross-connection. That's what we've done. Architecture?
Hold on. Go ahead. So I see an area here, it says existing wetlands to be filled.
Yes. There actually is a permit, and then it was applied and gained by others, and we're transferring it into our name. It's only about less than 1/10 of an acre of isolated wetlands. I believe it was actually probably a man-made feature.
You go for, excuse me, an individual permit?
No, it's general permit number 6, filling of an isolated wetland.
Is it looks like, I can't really tell, but it almost looks like it's in the parking lot or in between.
Yeah, there is today an existing partially paved and gravel parking lot. That wetland is more, I think, in the wooded feature, and then there's a portion of the wetlands that extends up by the parking lot.
So what will that permit do for you then? It'll just allow you to?
Correct. It'll
Fill it?
fill that area, right.
Were there any other areas of disturbance beside that?
Well, for construction purposes, we'd probably be disturbing just virtually the entire 1-acre property. And part of our formal application will include details of grading, drainage, landscaping, lighting.
Stormwater.
We're just not there at this point. Right, correct. Likely some type of underground stormwater management feature. We've already done some on-site soil testing, and we're prepared, subsequent to this discussion, to move forward with detailed engineering plans for a formal application.
Thank you.
Yep.
And, sorry, one last, the back building then, the one that's not on 206, building 2.
This one?
No, sorry.
Proposed.
On the,
Oh.
on the proposed, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it intended that the view would essentially be the same just from Amwell that you would get from 206?
They're actually, I think, and I'll leave that to the architect, because I think both buildings, and it truly is about the architecture on this. There's been quite a bit of thought and detail, and there are two different styles of architecture. I think they're similar, but two different styles.
Okay.
But yeah, the thought process is, you know, in keeping with the TC zone, because this, you know, it's a unique property where we have frontage on two, bless you.
Thank you.
We have frontage on two properties. We're trying to adhere to the TC zone by providing a building on both frontages. And I'll let the architect speak. There's actually, we have a rendering of that, yeah.
I have a few questions. The road profile you're showing for 206, does that conform to the town center profile that's in the ordinance?
Yes.
And I'm assuming this would match up with the profile in front of LD Construction that was just approved that you worked on?
Correct.
So it'll be continuous, no breaks in it, no jogs in it, I should say. Obviously, there'll be a break at the Bottle King property, but
Right.
it'll be a straight line.
Right.
Okay. Obviously, this is all about the town center, and you've made a couple of comments regarding why the buildings are laid out the way they were. The architecture notwithstanding, and it is attractive buildings, but how do you say that, or consistent, or how do you, let me put it another way. The town center is about a continuous street wall, Main Street environment, buildings fronting on the street. This is obviously, again, the architecture is notwithstanding, it's a traditional strip mall type of layout. How do you rectify that? How do you deal with that, address that disparity from the whole town center concept that this isn't town center Main Street?
I think basically it's all about probably screening the parking so that...
No, it's not just about screening the parking. It's about having, there was a comment before about why do you have a restaurant on 206? My question is, why isn't the whole building fronting on 206? And you have various, and I realize it's a hard property to deal with, but maybe the driveway could be narrowed down at least, so you have one way in, one way out. You have basically three access points to this property. The bank, you have Amwell 206 and the bank. Can you somehow work those access points better so that you don't have to have these full-width driveways on both Amwell and 206, so that you can turn at least the 206 building parallel to 206 and utilize more the Amwell Road or the bank? As you know from the LD construction project, we did work out, the board did work out a sort of a cross-through road pattern through the park and ride.
Right.
You know, how do we create this almost internal road system to connect? What I envision this as really like a super block from the LD construction all the way up to the Shell station. How do we start? We've started with the LD construction project to fashion this sort of internal road system connecting properties. Why can't we do something like that here to allow you to turn the building, at least one of them, or to refashion the buildings? Or just as I'm looking as an idea, creating a pass-through alley street through your property and actually fronting your buildings on that street, but something other than a traditional, again, and it's not a negative,
Yeah,
but it's a traditional strip mall layout.
Yeah, we could discuss and consider that with the applicant and the architect. I think what you're faced with is really this balancing act of trying to institute these thoughts, but also from a retail, commercial standpoint, having a viable site, you know, let the applicant
But
speak
we're,
to that.
as you know, Mike, we're at the precipice. The bypass will be finished within a year. LD construction will probably be on the ground in a year. It's our first piece of Main Street. It's all starting to come together now. I mean, before people would say the bypass will never be built. Why should we build according to town center standards? It's here.
Right.
And we'd like everybody to really look more closely at the town center vision. We have the bypass. It's going to happen. LD construction is a continuous street wall of mixed-use buildings. It's the first piece of Main Street. Let's continue that process now, that the opportunity is there. Let's not just look at the traditional.
Understood.
It's
Yeah.
a narrow piece
We
of
can look at
property,
that.
we'll put a strip mall on it.
Right.
I think David's right. I mean, I think if we're just kind of conceptually looking at it, you know, if, where this is situated, there are certainly some constraints with the layout of the lot. We get that, but I think ideally, we'd like to see it conform to as much of the master plan and, you know, the downtown vision as possible.
Right, I think the key element probably was pointed out by Mr. Maskey in his review, where there's a restriction on the amount of frontage that's utilized for something other than a building, where, you know, that max is 30% and we're closer to 50, right, David?
Correct.
And that's, I think where, from a planning architectural standpoint, that's where you're guiding us. Understood.
Mike, could you also, with the cross-access to the bank, reconfigure both of those driveways to be more two-way as opposed to limited one-way all the way through to the Bottle King?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
since you already are impacting that piece of property with the two-way access at the top of the page, if you looked at further at the...
This piece right here.
That piece and even the entrance piece to the south or to the bottom of the page, the beginning of the drive, yeah, maybe somehow reconfigure those to allow access to the middle of the site, or look at possibly two-way connection straight through from the bottom.
I think this really is the entrance to the drive-through lanes for the bank, but your suggestion about perhaps trying to convert this to two-way traffic, we can have that discussion with the bank.
I mean, just a general observation also, that driveway off of 206 seems like it would be a bottleneck. I mean...
Our driveway?
Yeah, the one right off of 206 there.
Right.
I mean, you're talking, that's one way in, one way out, and then before the barrier comes down on 206, you'd have people trying to make a left into there, even going northbound.
Well, hopefully there will be no barrier ever here at this point on Main
But for
Street.
right now,
206.
You know?
Right, but
No
I
traffic
understand.
You know, that's pretty tight.
We can look at that.
Yeah.
Architecture?
Public. Yep. Public's raising their hand. Come on up, Sue.
Public's raising their hand.
Yeah.
Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. I have a question about that exit from the back that goes over to the bank property on the upper left, on the Amwell Road side. That would be a cross-access that would go to the bank and then come out in the Bottle King property?
Correct.
Okay, Bottle King objected to having the LD go through there. Do you anticipate that they will allow the cross-access from your property through the bank onto theirs, the increased traffic from your project?
Well, that driveway exists now because it's the exit for the bank
Yeah.
drive-through. And we have an access easement to connect to it. So I don't think Bottle King would have any, I'll say, authority or right to object to what we're proposing. But perhaps the change of the driveway, to make it two-way, would eventually go onto their property, and they might have something to say
Yeah, I
about
think
it.
the other one was through the back.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Which, you know, was where all their loading areas and everything, which was what was making it problematic. This already exists, essentially.
Right.
Okay, I was just thinking of the increased traffic going through the Bottle King property. Also, I didn't understand on the Route 206 side, that was going to be a right-in, right-out only?
No, actually, right now, we're proposing it as a left-in, right-in, right-out, and then just right, no, I guess really it's no left-out. That's the only turning movement we're proposing to restrict there. It's a DOT jurisdiction.
Okay, when that is theoretically Main Street, will there be parallel parking on that section?
Yes, the exhibit I have up there now actually shows that. That's what, we move in, but that's what the goal would be in the future.
Okay, so those parking spaces on the highway, the parallel parking, that counts toward your parking space?
No. No. No, all the parking we're proposing is on-site that's credited toward our, requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mike, is there any possibility to remove that almost loop into the bank, into the ATM areas, and almost do a straight shot off 206 and then have an entry sort of behind the building?
I think we need
You
some
follow me?
tissue paper. We need some tissue paper and markers, like our meeting for LD construction.
Straight up through here, and then you went through here and straight in, eliminating this. Or it could, I guess it could remain, but.
Almost have a shared entrance
And then that would allow us to rotate our building
to the
90
front?
degrees and make it face. We can have that discussion with the bank, I guess. It's really the bank's property there.
I don't know.
Understood.
Obviously, I don't know their interest in doing that, but
Okay.
Have they agreed to the cross-access and all this stuff already, as far as
Right.
allowing the egress through their drive-through and?
Yes,
and that?
yeah, the easements are there in place. About a year or so ago, there was another project proposed on this property that included drive-through, a restaurant with a drive-through that wasn't favorably received by the township, but part of that planning for that project included acquiring these easements for the cross-access.
What's the purpose of the, well, we'll call it, for lack of a better term, the overflow parking that's on that property now from the bank? What was the intention, do you recall?
I don't know, David.
But they don't need it anymore.
No, they're adequate on-site parking, but I don't know.
A few questions about signage. On face, it's quite excessive by town center standards. For instance, no signs there aren't supposed to be any freestanding signs, first of all. There are 2 freestanding signs, one on each side, both of which would exceed the maximum of 20 square feet. You have a clock tower with 90 square feet of signage on 2 sides. Again, the largest sign is only supposed to be 20 square feet. So it's quite a lot of signage on here. You're not supposed to have signs above the 2nd floor. There are signs, so the architecture's not up there now, at the top of the building. So it's something you might want to address. It's quite a lot of signage.
Yeah, the architectural, you'll see it in a minute, how the signs kind of work in concert with the architecture. And,
Yes, but
and
there's
we'll come in with a full site signage package as part of our formal application.
But you'll require a lot of waivers.
We'll have to
and/or
justify
variances.
whatever relief we request, yes.
Okay, any additional comments from the dais, public? Now it's time for the architect.
My next witness is Conrad Roncati, Jr. He is our architect, and however the buildings are configured, we're anticipating to look at some of the architectural styles that he's proposed for this project.
You swear any testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you state and spell your name for me?
Certainly. Conrad Roncati, Roncati, licensed architect and the principal of Architectura, located at 1 Executive Drive in Fort Lee, New Jersey.
Why don't you just narrate your vision for this project and your design style?
Certainly. There was a lot of comment about everything being based on architecture tonight, so I guess the pressure is on me. If I could just go back, I would like to look at the site plan again that Mr. Ford was referring to. And perhaps at great peril, I would just like to at least give the board a very quick benefit of the amount of time we spent planning the site and looking at the ordinance. This was not haphazard, as we would hope you would imagine. It wasn't. We looked at all types of configurations. The simplest way to really plan this site would be to locate a building between 206 and Amwell in a strip, very much like a strip mall, either along the north edge of the property or the south edge of the property, and run a 60-foot wide parking field parallel to it, a straight shot between Amwell and 206. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to create that strip mall feel, and certainly a strip mall that would be perpendicular to both of these roads. It also created a traffic condition that we didn't want to promote, which was creating a direct, speedy traffic beating beeline through this property. So we worked very carefully to try to create a parking lot that required a driver to enter and then have to turn 90 degrees to pull into the other parking field and out again, which would slow traffic, make it a little bit more difficult to maneuver, and hopefully keep people from using this as a quick pass-through to avoid the intersection to the north. With respect to the orientations of the buildings, we did feel that we were addressing each of the two streets. We didn't want this to be two buildings, one located on Amwell and the other on 206, that were disjointed and not connected. And if they were rotated 90 degrees, and I realize there's been a couple of comments about doing that, and we did try that. The building does end up having more road frontage, but it ends up being a building on one street, a building on the other, with a common parking lot in between. We didn't feel that that was what the municipality was looking for with respect to creating a downtown. We wanted to create that clock tower at the center and make this a place that did not feel like a strip mall. It looked like two and felt like two independent buildings. The architecture is very similar materials, but although the same style, they are different. They're not two identical buildings. The other complication with rotating the buildings, and again, I realize comments and suggestions were made to do this. When you rotate the buildings 90 degrees, these buildings, as they stand, are roughly the size of a modest large home. They're about 6,000 square feet each. These are not large buildings. The depth is 44 feet. When you rotate the buildings 90 degrees, the problem that we encountered was that fronting the building on Route 206, for example, meant that that building needed to have a public face. It needed to have a retail facade, but it was a retail facade that needed to be then repeated on the back of the building, so that people who made their way down a narrow driveway into a common parking field at the center would then have to either walk all the way around back to the front of the building on 206 or Amwell, or have another actual face of the building facing the interior. And that's not something that we wanted to create either. We wanted the buildings to face outward as best as possible to Amwell and to Route 206. And at 44 feet in depth, because these are relatively small retail buildings, it's very difficult to get a retail facade with a front on a parking lot and a front on a street on 206 or on Amwell. That's why we ended up with the buildings rotated with a significant amount of frontage, maybe not as much as we could have, but a reasonable amount of frontage on each of the streets. The people, whether they're on East Amwell or on Amwell or 206, look back through the site, they see the other building, there's a pedestrian path, there's a way for pedestrians to simply translate from one street to the other, even if they don't stop at one of the two buildings, or bikers for that matter. So I appreciate a moment of your time to discuss that, but we agonized over this for 6 to 8 months, and the client was very demanding in terms of trying different organizations. We did try the one that you, a couple of you have suggested this evening, the mayor included, and we found that it did not have the effect and the positive effect that we had hoped, and we really do feel, not that we won't come back with something else, but I just want you to know a lot of thought went into that.
If I may, this is informal, so I'll
Yes.
jump in. You're talking about the double-fronted buildings. Are you familiar with the LD construction project?
I'm actually not, no, I'm sorry.
They have exactly that. They have 3 separate mixed-use commercial buildings fronting on 206, 5 feet from the property line. And the storefronts front 206, but there are parking and apartments in the back. There's also entrances from the rear.
I'm not
So
familiar with it, and I'll have to
You
take a look.
at them, yeah.
That was our overwhelming concern. In addition, I had a rendering which I did not submit to the board because we just finished it just the other day. It's the first one, I'm sorry. You know, and I think just in context of this discussion about how does these buildings present themselves, you never really look at a building dead on, you're always looking at a building obliquely. This is an oblique rendering. This is what you would see heading south on Route 206. And I think given the building, the architecture, the style, the interest that we put into the building with the hip roof, the gable, the neo-colonial details, the use of materials, I think that they are handsome buildings. I think they do present well because you don't just read the front, you read the front and the side of each of the buildings very, very clearly. And I really was trying not to create a strip mall. I wanted these to look like buildings that had been there for a long period of time and were part of the, a downtown fabric that had developed over a period of time. I could go more into the buildings, but I've taken up a lot of your time just with our historical efforts, but we're talking about 2 buildings. Building 1 is 6,667 square feet on 2 floors. Building 2 is 6,604 square feet. So we're right about 13,200 square feet in total. So again, I feel it's modest. This rendering was done with respect to the tenant that is negotiating to be at this location, this ice cream shop, and we wanted to create this drawing for them, but I'm glad I brought it here this evening. The buildings, the exterior, are very similar materials, stone veneer, hardy plank siding. It's a stylized, modernized colonial aesthetic, I believe. There's lots of windows, but a good proportion of wall. The buildings each one use the same materials, but in a slightly different way. We didn't want them to look like 2 cookie-cutter repeat twin buildings, but they clearly come from the same design sentiment. But one has more metal roof and copper roof. The other does not. Stone goes up 2 stories on one building and only 1 on the other. So they relate to each other. They're of similar aesthetic, yet they are different when you look at them closely.
Can you go back to the site plan, the proposed?
Yes,
for a moment,
certainly.
please? You already have a relation, well, the owner has a relationship with the bank, obviously. The bank, as you can see, takes up an awful lot of space. I mean, for a relatively small building, they gobble up a lot of property.
Agreed.
Is there any chance you could work with the bank property to share parking, free up more space for more buildings on this property, actually, and better utilize the bank property that has frontage on both Amwell and Route 206? So just off the top of my head, if you were able to turn that building on 206 and actually make it longer, go on into the bank property somehow. The bank is way overparked as it is. Even this property is overparked.
So
use more for building space and somehow utilize the neighboring property in some way to get a better layout. Maybe a building in the middle You have a building fronting on Amwell, a building fronting on 206, maybe even a building in the middle, and then share parking between the two properties, something of that sort?
I can't speak to all of the details about this owner's relationship
Yeah.
with the bank, but just quickly, I know he was involved in the creation of this property a long, long time ago. He does not own the property. It's owned by the bank. I do know that just adding this connection, which he fought for because he felt that it provided some traffic relief onto Amwell Road, that having that interconnection would keep people from having to go out to Amwell or 206 and also, and then come back into the property, was something that we felt was good for the project and something the town would support. I can tell you that just that connection was hard fought. I can't give you details, but it's because he has done a lot of work with this bank and owns other properties where the bank is a tenant, that he was able to get this done. As far as using land, buying land, or transferring land, I've asked that question, and the response has been, there's no chance. This was a miracle to get what we got, and I think it benefits the property, I think it benefits the neighbors, and I think it benefits the town for its traffic benefits, but I wouldn't hold out any hope that this property could be increased in width or size. It would be nice, but I don't think that's in the cards.
I do think it, would create that pedestrian feel to that whole kind of parking area now that doesn't have that feel, similar to maybe like how the Starbucks kind of changed the mindset of that other area that Stop and Shop used to be in. So
Right.
people are walking around a little more. You're just always kind of concerned about the traffic flows, and people walking. But I do feel, conceptually, it's a good idea in terms of the town center, and every town needs a clock tower.
Right.
Right? So.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't show did I miss anything? I didn't show the clock tower. So the clock tower is located at the center of the property between the two buildings. It's open underneath, so the archway underneath provides an area where pedestrians can walking from the front of the property to the back or from east to west. It's 12 by 12, so again, modest in size. It's 40 feet tall, which is less than the ordinance, which allows 45 feet. So even our tower doesn't approach the maximum height. It does contain signage, as your planner has mentioned, and we'll provide an analysis for that. And again, the materials, the style is similar to the two buildings that are being proposed. I have nothing further unless there are any other questions. I'd be
Just
happy to
similar to the
answer.
question I asked before, so just trying to understand the second building then, the one that fronts on Amwell.
Yes.
Is it anticipated that the view would be similar to what you would see off of 206?
Yes, so we certainly understand that these buildings are seen 360 degrees, and we've treated them the same all the way around. We don't wrap stone around one facade and then give up on it on the other three. We don't run it around three sides and not around the fourth. We understand that these buildings will be visible on all four sides, and if you look at the elevations, we've been sensitive to that and treated all the facades the same. The Amwell side building does not have the dining terrace
Pavilion,
and that concept, but we still think it addresses the street, presents itself to the street, and enlivens the street in the same aesthetic way.
Thank you.
Sure.
The back, could you just show the back wall of each building? Sure.
So sheet A101 is up on the screen. The four elevations are shown. The upper left colored elevation is the north facade that faces into the parking. The bottom left is the elevation that we see in the rendering, which is where the ice cream shop is being planned. The upper right, of course, is the west facade that faces towards the center of the property. And then at the bottom right, this is the south facade of the building that faces the bank.
And the first floor has no windows, correct?
The first floor
Just
has service doors.
No windows?
No.
So it's basically a blank wall? Facing the...
It's not as, yeah, it's not as
Which would be visible from 206?
It would be visible from 206, yes.
Can you show the other building? Back wall again, so that back wall at the bottom right...
Faces the Shell
Faces
station.
the Shell station. Again, the first floor is no windows, just service doors.
Correct.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. I'm sure we'll see Mr. Maskey for some technical review meetings between now and our site plan application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. We appreciate, you know, the downtown area, the town center is starting to, you can actually start to see the vision come together. So we appreciate the work in trying to work with us and trying to get to something that kind of complies with what we're looking at. We understand some of your limitations, so we look forward to seeing some additional feedback. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Give you 5? Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. And so it was about 10 of, so we'll reconvene at 5 of.
I begin?
Yep, we've reconvened and...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Robert Kasuba. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Bisker Hoff. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Hillsborough 206 Holdings, LLC. This is we're here for an amended site plan approval. This site and this application was in front of this board about a year ago and received preliminary and final site plan approval among other relief. During the course of the kind of finalization of the plans for plan conformance, there were some, I'll say, shifting of the buildings. There was a slight increase in things like the clubhouse, and just some, in our opinion, very minor and de minimis moving of things around. When we submitted for plan conformance, there was a request from the planning director to come back in, that just in the totality, wanted to have the board take a look at this as an amended site plan approval. So that's what we submitted to the board, and that's why we're here this evening. There's no change in terms of like number of units. There's 175 residential units. Still the affordable housing set aside of 24% of 42 units. There's no new variance condition or any other relief from the municipal ordinances that's requested as part of these amendments. I think as we proceed through this testimony tonight, you'll see why, in our opinion, we view this are fairly minor changes to what was previously presented to this board and what was approved by this board. I do have 3 witnesses, expert witnesses, civil engineering, architecture, and traffic, just to present what the changes are and to respond to the issues that were raised in the review letters. We received one from the planning director and also one from the engineer. Many of our responses our responses to many of those are going to be, we'll comply, we'll provide the additional information. There's some that we do require at least some discussion, just so the board understands, our position on the matter. But without further ado, I'd like to start with our first witness and to present the application this evening.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Kasuba's first witness, for the purposes of the record, This is Hillsborough 206 Holdings LLC, 18 PB07 MSPV, a 2019 amended site plan. Block 202, Lot 4 on Route 206. Applicant is seeking an amended preliminary and final major site plan approval, proposing changes to the footprint of several residential buildings and an increase into the clubhouse footprint on property in the MUI-1, which is the Mixed Unit Inclusionary District-1 zoning district, and in the ASD, the Architectural and Site Design Overlay Zone. The approval of the original major site plan application was granted by this board on December 13th, 2018, and the resolution memorializing on March 28th, 2019.
Thank you.
You swear your testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name, next name?
James Ward, W-A-R-D, Bowman Consulting, 303 West Main Street, Freehold, New Jersey.
Could you please give the board the benefit of your background and experience as a civil engineer?
Sure. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I prepared the site plan before you this evening. I provided testimony on the previous site plan application.
I ask that the board accept them.
Unless there's any objections, we'll accept.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to walk through the site plan changes that were provided. A site plan comparison exhibit was provided, dated September 10th, 2019. The plan shows the original layout outlined in red. That could be marked as A1.
And for the purpose of the record, indicate the date and what this is.
It's entitled Site Plan Comparison Exhibit, dated September 10th, 2019.
Thank you.
And it's a one-of-one exhibit. The original layout, as I said, is outlined in red. The current amended site plan is underneath that, and that pretty much superimposes what the changes to the layout are. Essentially, there's no changes in the number of buildings or location of buildings. There's been a slight increase in building coverage and a slight increase in impervious cover. The increase in building cover is 0.7%, so that takes us from 10.25% to 11.2%, where maximum allowable was 20%, so there's no variance regarding that. The impervious cover increase was 0.2 acres. That takes us from a 35.2% impervious cover to 35.9, where maximum allowable is 45, so we're still under those thresholds. Like I said, the building changes that were in the residential footprints total 7,297 square feet, and it's dispersed throughout each of the 14 buildings. So it's evenly dispersed throughout there. Minor changes to each one. Some building footprints actually got smaller. Some increased a little bit. The clubhouse footprint increased 1,399 square feet. It was originally 6,500 square feet. It's now 7,899 square feet. And there's no change to the 3 retail buildings that were previously approved. As far as the layout, there's minor change to the Road D alignment, which is the closest one to Route 206, just to accommodate some of the increase in the building there. There's no other changes to any of the other internal roadway or the access to 206 as originally approved. There's no change in the total number of parking spaces. We still provide 404, which exceeds the 390 that's required. The only change to parking was that there was some surface parking in front of buildings 6 and 14. There was 8 surface parking spaces that changed to 4 driveway and 4 garage spaces. So it was an even swap. in that. So the limits of disturbance of the project are identical as to what was previously approved, so there's no encroachment into any of the wetland buffers or flood hazard area or any of the other regulated areas beyond what was originally approved and approved by DEP as well. There's no changes to the stormwater basin, as the de minimis increase in impervious cover was just accommodated through the original design. So there was extra capacity in the original stormwater basins. Okay, and I'd like to address some of the requests for testimony provided in T&M's letter dated November 27th, 2019. There was a comment B13 regarding the construction of the retail portion and the phasing that was proposed. So at the moment, there is no retail tenant per se. The applicant would love to build to suit to an actual retail tenant and would like to hold off as long as possible, knowing that they would have to come back to the board if they change the building footprints. But the phasing that was proposed was to just construct the portion of the parking area in the retail pad site in order to accommodate a school bus that would come, stop in front of the clubhouse, and then loop back around through the retail and then back out to 206. So that was part of the phasing of the construction for the retail portion.
Can I just jump in for a second?
Yes.
Can you just go over that again, the phasing? So,
yes.
Well, more simply put, when do you plan to construct the retail sites? After all the residential is done, or?
Well, correct. The residential would definitely be constructed first.
I see some heads shaking the opposite in the back.
If I could just chime in
Yeah.
there. I think that the goal is, as soon as we have retail tenants lined up, that's when we will
Okay, well,
proceed with the
just,
construction.
and I realize it
of
wasn't
retail.
put in the ordinance as a requirement, but as we discussed this ordinance when it was developed, the idea was to make sure it was a mixed-use development. If we have 174 or 75 units built and 3 empty pads fronting 206, I don't think that was the intention of the ordinance.
I don't think that's our intention either.
Okay.
I think our intention is that at present, we don't know whether or not, for instance, would there be one tenant that would actually
Yeah,
take it,
right,
and
I'm
we
not
would
talking about the
actually-
floor plan so much, but I don't
That's-
think it was the intention of the ordinance to see this empty, basically an empty lot fronting on 206 in front of the completed residential units.
I think I understand your comment. I'm not sure how we can accommodate it, though, until we have tenants lined up to the space. I guess our concern is if we, build it without a tenant lined up, then, it may be undesirable for certain tenants. And certain tenants may want, a different split between square footage, might
Yeah,
result in
okay.
combined buildings or.
I guess my concern is
That's-
somewhat with the history in town we've had, where we have had other developments, not yours, that certain things, yes, we'll build that as if we can build this. Well, that never got built, and it still isn't built today. So my concern personally, and as the drafter of the ordinance, is that we have 175 units and no retail space because you haven't lined up a tenant yet. That wasn't the intention. And maybe that's not for you.
Yeah, that wasn't the intention of my testimony.
Okay, well,
The intention of my testimony was,
the phasing
yes.
sort of raised some red flags.
Correct,
The
correct,
phase
and I
is
was
that-
trying to explain
The
that.
phase is, phase 5 in 2030, that's probably.
Correct. Yeah, in terms of phasing, it's just that that portion will be constructed first. And
That
then
portion being the residential.
the portion of the parking lot will be constructed first. In
So a
order.
parking lot with empty pad sites.
Correct. There is a detail in the construction drawings. And primarily, it's, I think, intended for a contractor to understand what limits he was constructing
So
at that time.
can you be clear as to what is currently required in the original phasing plan and what you're requesting? It seems kind of nebulous to me. I'd just like to understand specifically what you're asking for, because I'm not sure I'm clear.
Somebody want to explain better than me? Chuck?
No, I mean, I wasn't here that handled the initial application, but I'll explain it as I understand it.
Okay, with all due respect, can I have someone that's testifying answer the question?
Sure,
Thank you.
if you want to have a witness respond, that's
Yes.
fine.
Swear him in.
Let me just swear you in, all right?
Sure.
You swear your testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you state and spell your name for me?
Sure, my name is Charles Thomas. I'm Vice President of B&E Real Estate. So the whole idea here for the project, for the retail section, is at this time, we don't have tenants lined up. And just as we were saying before, we've been shopping it, we've had some interest from pre-K schools and no real retail. So that means if we were to have a pre-K come in, we would have one large building. But again, that hasn't been formalized, and that's kind of not going anywhere. So what we need to do is, no matter what, we have to build the parking lot in the front. As Mr. Ward was saying, when we met with the Board of Education, we went through the plans. They didn't want to circulate a bus through our area, as you probably remember from previous testimony. Pickup, we have a bus school pickup pad right in the front. The school bus will then circulate through the parking lot. So it has to be built. The intent has always been to have the retail in the front. We have no intention of not having the retail. But the problem is just getting what would fit the best. So right now at this time, we're going to just bring this, while it'll be pad ready, we're not going to actually pour concrete pads out there. It'll be landscaped, or we'll have lawn out there. So it'll be well maintained. We're not going to let it go fallow by any means. The whole project is going to be well landscaped and well maintained. So while it'll be a green area in the front temporarily until we find a tenant, we just want to find the right tenant, that's all.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I don't think that was my question. I'd like to understand specifically, when is it required today, and what relief do you want from what's required today?
I don't know.
I would say we're not required to pull building permits under the earlier approval.
Okay.
That would be, my statement as to what the earlier approval was. I think what we were trying to do is to seek clarification and to explain to the board that what we would intend to do is, when we have a tenant lined up for that space, we would come back to the board, because it would probably be modified from what's shown on these plans. And we want to be very clear with the board as to that.
And when is the outside time frame that we would do that?
When we would come back to the board? I don't know if we can commit to a specific time period.
Okay.
I'll turn to my client and get advice for that.
Well, I think just following up what David was saying, I think we just don't want to get into a scenario where there's that, just open-ended, well, we haven't found the right tenant, so we're not putting the retail there.
I think, I'm sorry.
We've engaged a broker.
Okay.
It's not as if we're waiting for somebody to
I
come to us.
recognize
We
that.
have a broker out there looking for tenants for us. And if they say these are the exact buildings we want, we're good to go.
Yeah, and just so it's clear, the ordinance requires a minimum of 12,500 square feet of retail, office, et cetera. If you don't build it, you have a non-conforming use on this property. You can't have just residential. That wouldn't be a permitted use in this zone if you didn't have the retail. You have to have 12,500 square feet minimum. So unless you have the two together, you have you're violating your original approval.
Understood.
So it's understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so, Dave, just for clarification, is it just 12,500 square feet total, one building?
Combined total of retail, office, restaurants, fiduciary, it's a minimum 12.5, max 20,000.
And there was no requirement in terms of the time frame as to when that would be built in comparison to the?
No, not in the ordinance, no.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get to.
Understood. And I just want to be clear that when we kind of use the term retail, but it really includes all of those non-residential uses that are permitted.
And just real quick, I'm not opposed to you configuring the building to what you want. I guess it sounds like you want a sort of open-ended time frame for that, and I'm just trying to see how we can rein that back in, because there's got to be some point where we say, you know what, you guys got to build some retail.
I think we understand the concern.
So where are we? And I would just say, just to clarify to David's point, if the retail isn't built, they can't really fill the residential, right? You can't rent out residential if the retail, if you're not doing both.
Yeah, I don't think.
True?
I don't think that's how it works.
The intent of the parties in putting this situation and resolution together was a mixed-use development. The concept was not necessarily to build a traditional mixed use with retail on the first floor and apartments above. But it was never the understanding of the township and the people who were part of this, which includes myself, that it was going to be, let's build 175 units of residential, and then somewhere along the line, if we find ourselves a suitable tenant, we'll then build one or more of the retail buildings. It's supposed to all come together. I would argue, so that the applicant is not unaware of the position, is any attempt to fill the residential in the absence of the building of the retail is going to be a problem, because that was not the intent of the parties when this agreement was put together and this ordinance was put together. Yes, there is a piece of it that has an affordable component to it, which will, by the way, also become an issue, because not only will it have to be built with the phasing of the affordable, it's going to have to be filled with the affordable, which therefore makes the retail even more important, because we'll add one more group of people that Mr. Kasuba so loves as much as I do, which is fair share housing, wanting to know where their affordable housing is. And the affordable housing comes with the rest of the residential and the retail. Not residential, then sometime down the road, retail. So
there has to be a window, I guess what we're saying.
Well, let me talk to my client. I think we understand the concern. I don't want to be argumentative with your attorney on what the agreement was and what the zoning is, but maybe there's a way that we can, find something that's acceptable to both sides.
The zoning is a mixed-use development with residential, of which 24% of it is affordable, and retail along with it. What your client is getting the benefit out of is not having to do, for example, what some of the other interveners are doing, like Larkin, which is building residential and commercial in the same set of buildings. But it's not, and for the purposes of that exhibit, it's not those three items at the top left, as I'm looking at, get dealt with at some point along the way, and the other 11 get built and filled. That was never the intention, that was never the situation, and it was actually a granting to your client so that they wouldn't have to do that situation, was to do separate retail. I will tell you that we've been told in multiple conversations about we're still looking for retail. At some point, we need to stop looking for the perfect retail client and find it, because that's not what everybody wanted and intended for this property.
I'm just going to throw out there, because I'm assuming you will be building the residential without renters already lined up, so I think, we understand where things are at. That I think, you don't need to wait for your commercial renters.
I don't want to, I think
but-
there's different markets, but
I understand different
I
markets,
understand the
but I
comments
think
of-
you kind of, get, that you're going to be building without clients necessarily, one way or the other, with the residential, so, I think commercial can follow too, because, this is what you provided us a year ago. clearly given us the understanding was the vision. And now it sounds like we're pausing.
We're not asking you to create a commercially unviable building, but just understand that it's not a scenario that it's the last thing that should be done. So there's got to be a window that the retail piece is going to be completed.
I mean, I certainly understand the comment. I have to confer it with my client before, obviously I'm not in a position to agree to anything on the record, but we certainly understand what the concern is that's been raised by the board.
Right. So I'm just, and David, maybe you can help clarify, I mean, with this application, what are we approving from a commercial standpoint? I mean, we've got the residential plans here, so.
Yeah, the retail, we shouldn't call them retail, the commercial buildings, because they could be office, fiduciary, et cetera. They are already, the buildings themselves are permitted. Obviously, we don't permit the actual tenant, that's a zoning permit down the road. So everything you see on that plan, for the most part, has been approved. They are altering the footprints, altering the clubhouse, some landscaping, lighting, et cetera. The commercial buildings, they're not touching under this particular amendment. So that approval still stands. Those buildings are still approved in accordance with those footprints. Again, not to beat this dead horse some more, but the phasing request, I'm not sure where it came from, quite honestly. And that just raised a red flag when they started. We want to phase the commercial portion. Other than that, they're already permitted. They don't need any additional approvals for those commercial buildings. Yes, if built in the manner that they presented a year ago.
So is there a phasing portion that's under consideration for this evening?
Right now, there was no phasing plan with the initial approval. It was just we're going to build it all. There was no phasing, we'll build this now and then this later. There wasn't. Now they are coming back and, for whatever reason, requesting a phasing. And as the mayor said, but I don't know what exactly, there hasn't been a set phase presented to us. That this will be built from here to here, this will be built in phase 2, this will be built in phase 3, or whatever it is. So I'm kind of at a loss as well in terms of when they ask for a phasing plan, I'm not sure what it is yet.
So is that part of the amendment application at all?
No.
Yeah, the amended site plan has to do with the physical configuration of the residential and the clubhouse, some of the parking spaces, as was noted, a little variation on the main street. The amended site plan, it really has nothing to do with the commercial buildings. They've added on this request for a phasing. So I think the two requests could be separated.
There is no request, there is no formal application that I'm aware of. This application that indicates anything other than what it is, a change in building layout and an increase in the square footage of the clubhouse. That's the application before you.
Correct.
The fact that somebody opened up Pandora's box is going to be the problem of getting it closed.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to confer with the client for a minute.
No sweat.
Could you, I'm sorry, I missed maybe what was last said. Was there a question pending, or should I just have the
No, I guess
witness
as a board, in a way, it's almost two different issues. There's the site plan issues, and we need to, I guess, finish your testimony regarding the physical aspects of what you're actually changing on the site. You're not changing anything regarding the commercial, and maybe the question of phasing could be taken up at the end, or when you get through the actual site plan amendment, and then talk about the phasing, if that makes sense to the board.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
So like I said, I was trying to address the comments in the T&M letter that required additional testimony. I think we needed more testimony on that one. Going down through the letter, basically we will plan on complying with everything that's been asked for. The traffic engineer will provide more testimony regarding traffic-related things. Architect will provide testimony regarding the architectural things. My testimony is that none of these changes impact any of the outside agency approvals that we've obtained.
Right, now, just for clarification, my letter sort of mirrored the original engineering letter that Mazer had put together, and we're just identifying that as part of this submission, a lot of those items were still pending, and that they had not been addressed. So it's really for information purposes only, and we identified some additional testimony that would be required. And then just real quick on the phasing, there was just a blurb in their narrative that was submitted as part of this amended plan, where they mentioned phasing, and we just raised the issue to, it's not shown anywhere on the plans, but you mentioned it in your narrative. Please explain.
Yes. Okay. I attempt to explain it as being more of a sequence of construction rather than a traditional, what you might consider a phasing plan.
Yeah, and just to follow up on Mr. Euro's comment, this was probably something that should have been simple, that got very complicated. The applicant never came in for compliance plans from the original approval. So Bob, originally it was Mazer. Bob looked at it, and there was never a compliance plan submitted to show that they complied with everything that Mazer had requested. So we're kind of betwixt and between situation here that, yes, they will meet all of Bob's engineering comments. In essence, they're still meeting Mazer's comments. They never came back with plans showing that they met everything. So it got a little more complicated than necessary, probably.
So was there an expected time frame for this, for these to have been met?
Generally, the site plan gets approved, they go through whatever revisions were necessary with the board resolution. They would change the plans to meet whatever the engineering specs were. And then when they're ready with all that, they come into us, show us their revised plans. We match it against the resolution, and Bob would match it against the engineering specs. We would approve it, and then the chair and the secretary sign the plans, and it goes forward as approved plans. We never got to that point for whatever reason.
And if I just may add that we were in the process of submitting the plan conformance, and that's when those were submitted, and then there were, I used the phrase, tweaks or modifications made to the plan, and that's when, we were informed that we should come back in front of the board because maybe not one of these tweaks, it was sufficient enough to come back to the board, but just in the aggregate, there was, sufficient tweaks that it's something that, should be a planning board amended site plan approval, rather than an administrative change for something like that. But I think we can see from Exhibit A1, if you're looking at it from this distance, it looks like the red lines match up with the existing building. It is, for all intents and purposes, the same layout, same number of buildings, same number of units. There's no material change from that perspective.
So your testimony is you'll meet all the comments in Mr. Euro's letter, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
If I could just ask one question about the T&M review letter, since you mentioned it, and there was a reference to outside agency approvals. For 11D, E, and F, those are kind of municipal entities and boards that, not like the Environmental Commission, Board of Health, fire official. I assume that there were comments in the initial application, and there wouldn't necessarily be a reason to go back to those three entities.
No reason. We'll just coordinate, make sure that whatever comments they made are incorporated in the plans.
Fair enough. I just didn't want to have to start over the clock again, if you will, on any of those issues. Thank you.
Any additional questions for the engineer?
And there was no changes in those general permits submitted to DEP with the amendment, right?
That's correct.
It's all the same?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Okay. So I'd like to have a motion to open it to public.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Susan, come on up.
Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. One thing I didn't understand, why are you requesting these changes? Are you making larger apartments? are you going to be changing anything with the affordables? Do you need more community space or more office space or maintenance space? Why are you making the changes?
The architect will discuss why the buildings had changed. Basically, the same number of units, same number of bedrooms, same number of everything. Just the footprints have changed de minimisly, and like was said, I guess the aggregate of the changes necessitated us to come back.
Okay, any other questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, you're free for now.
Thank you. Our next witness? Well, I think good lead-in from the question from the public about architecture.
Swear your testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you state and spell your name for me?
My name is Jack Raker, R-A-K-E-R.
Could you give the board the benefit of your background and experience as an architect?
Sure. I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. 20 years of experience. I'm a principal at Minnow and Wasco Architects and Planners. I have testified before this board during the first hearing and numerous boards before the state in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, unless there's any objections, we will accept. You may proceed.
Okay, I'm going to focus on mostly just the changes. So, you know, I don't have, I brought all of my exhibits, the first exhibits, and I made duplicates for the, you know, next exhibit in case I get any questions. But I'm just going to focus on the changes. So, in the drawing on the left, we have a typical.
Could you mark that as Exhibit A2 for the record? And then while you're up there, you may as well mark the one on the right.
You can take the microphone, not that one.
No,
the wireless.
Oh, there's a hand.
Yeah.
Oh, that's even better. That's, okay, it's on, great.
You don't need a pointer or anything. You're going to mark the exhibit on the left as A2. Can you indicate, sir, what that represents?
Okay, on the left, we have A2, and it is a 3-module elevation of one of the 3-module buildings. You see it from the site plan. There are a series of buildings and designed with a number of different unit types within them, and they're placed together, and they form this chain, essentially. And this particular elevation I'm showing has 3 of those modules put together. And I brought that because that was the elevation I focused on the first time I did testimony, and the elevation to the right is actually the board that was marked in the first time I did testimony, and that was A6 at that time. Do I need to remark that board?
Yes, I think you should, just for the purposes of this hearing. That should be Exhibit A3 for this hearing, which was Exhibit A6 at the first hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Kasu.
So you can see that the 2 boards, you know, that are substantially similar in elevation, and same number of, you know, the same amount of movement, material changes, dormers. We've actually added some mother-daughter dormers to give a little bit more visual interest. But the reason I'm here is because the buildings on the left, because we have these spaces within the roof, after we did structural engineering we needed to push the ridge line up to get some clearances under in the stairwells to get up to those levels. So the building on the left is actually 2 feet higher than the building on the right. So we do need that additional 2 feet, even though we're well under the allowable 45 feet. So the building on the right, I testified to was 33 feet. The building on the left is now 35 feet.
Yeah, just for clarification, so the board knows what you're talking about. The original approval was for 33-foot high buildings, but now they are coming in, as you just heard, to have that increased, that the maximum height be from 33 to 36. It doesn't require variance, but the buildings were approved at 33 feet. Now they're proposing 36.
Right, and the allowable is 45. So we're well under that allowable height. But you can see substantially everything is very similar in buildings. And I could go through every elevation. I don't want to bore you. It'd be the same as this. I do have them. If you have questions, I can go through them.
Are they all generally the same? It's all still the same 2-foot differential?
2-foot differential. Some of the buildings, you can see that there's varying roof lines in these elevations. On the left-hand side, that roof height is about 34 feet. But on the right, you don't measure the building by the lowest height, you measure it from the highest height. So in the worst case scenario, we're at 35 feet. Next major change, and then there was some expansion in the building footprints. I could bring up a building footprint, but it was simply a matter of marketing and deciding that we wanted to add a little bit of square footage to maybe a bedroom, or a little square footage to an entry, or just allow a little bit wider garage. And then when you take that over 3 modules or over 4 modules, that expanded that footprint slightly. So that was where that additional square footage came from.
Did you change the bedroom, numbers of bedroom or bedroom configuration at all?
All of the bedroom configurations are the same. The layouts and the plans are substantially the same. I mean, minor modifications by when we work out, as we go through, we work out cabinet sizes so that the kitchens might adjust in size, or some of the layouts might adjust relative to some work. We get into much greater detail when it comes to construction documentation. So these drawings, the drawings that I'm showing you, are from our construction documents. They're just been illustrated to show you.
Mark that as A4. And indicate what A4 is.
Drawing on the left is A4. It's the clubhouse plan and elevation, and it's dated 9/11/2019.
How many additions?
This will be the last unless I get questions.
Is this the proposed clubhouse configuration, or is that the current?
This is the current clubhouse configuration. When I say current, it's the one that is the newest, the expanded, with the newest date.
So it's the proposed.
Correct. So that's proposed. This was the one that was approved. It's marked as A9, 12/13/18. It is now, I guess, A5. So you can see that in this clubhouse, we did some marketing research and decided that we wanted to perhaps expand that club room a little bit. We did rearrange the layout. We added some utility space, a nicer entry. So that footprint did expand. We have, initially you could see in the older footprint, we had our fitness space here. Our fitness space was expanded here. These are becoming more and more popular. As time's gone on, we can see our amenity packages for all of our rental housing is just growing and growing and growing as time goes on. So it's only been a year, but we've already expanded. And as the engineer testified, it was about 1,400 square feet of expansion. But we were able to keep the same height on this building. And that is the extent of my changes. I can go through the letter and address any comments in the letter or answer any questions.
Yeah, one of my comments was, can you relabel the buildings, so, because you moved some units from perhaps 2 buildings to other buildings, so from the original, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken?
we modified some of the layouts and switched some of those from one building to the next, and that's what caused the expansion.
Okay, so at some point when you come in for compliance review, for instance, you'll label the buildings, how many units per building?
Oh, units, you want the units per building?
Number of
Sure.
units, yeah,
Sure.
okay. Right. Now, just in terms of the changes in some of the footprints and some of the initial conversations I had with your folks, was there, this is more for Bob's benefit perhaps, was something to do with getting too close to a retaining wall, so you had to wanted to move one of the buildings, is that correct?
I think that's more of an engineering question,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, but
Yes, correct. I will pull this exhibit back up. It was Building 7. This retaining wall is in exactly the same spot as it was before. The red is the original outline. The attempt was to standardize some of these buildings. Originally, there's 14 unique buildings was originally. Now they've consolidated some of them, and some of them are the same buildings, like Building 1 and Building 2 or whatnot are identical for construction. But it was in Building 7 that the unit count changed, and that went to one of the other buildings. And do we know exactly which building?
I don't know.
that's right. No, let's get back to the retaining wall question.
Yeah, correct. So the retaining wall is here. It's in exactly the same spot. The building in the amended plan is actually moved away from it. Whereas if they tried to standardize that building, it would encroach into the retaining wall. So in order...
How far?
It was into the retaining wall.
How far has it been moved now from?
It has been moved from the original footprint 3.33 feet to the west, away from the retaining wall.
Bob, do you have any issues with that?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to address the letter or questions?
Which letter, Mr. Euro's letter?
That was the engineering letter, I believe. Number 10, the applicant shall provide testimony on which units will have a garage and driveway combination. All units that have direct access to the garages are directly attached to the units themselves. It's not like you can rent a garage and take the building across the street. There is a doorway that leads directly to that unit. So that door is connected, that garage is linked to that unit, and that unit has the garage. The total number of garages, I don't know if I have that in front of me. But all of those garages do have a driveway access behind it.
That's fine.
Okay.
Just one other, I think the one other comment was regarding lofts, item 11. Yeah, B11.
We don't have lofts, we have bedrooms in attic space, so at a floor level. There's no loft, they are bedrooms, and they are counted as bedrooms in our count.
Okay, thank you.
And the plans will reflect such?
The plans do reflect that, yes.
They will, because I don't think they are marked. The lofts has bedrooms, just.
They're marked as lofts? Okay, well, I'll make sure they get marked as bedrooms.
Den, I thought,
Huh?
right?
What was that?
Is that the den?
No. This is actually the 2 bedrooms I have.
we'll make sure that they're labeled as bedrooms,
Okay.
clearly. And then I believe the next comment is the architectural plan shall revise to show dimensions for the following. We will do this. We'll revise and show dimensions for all of those spaces. And then, again, we already addressed this item. The applicant shall submit revised architectural plan showing the floor layout of each retail tenant. And at this point, that is unknown. But obviously we will when we get the tenant.
Okay, thank
And then item 10 is with same answer.
I have nothing further.
Just one, maybe for the architect, maybe for the engineer, maybe for both. This was a comment actually made in the original application as well. You designed, shown the drive-through facility for what would ostensibly be a bank, which is the only thing that's allowed to have a drive-through facility. Based somewhat on what your testimony has been, not yours but others, that you don't know who's going in those buildings. We want to make sure that if it's not a bank, that we don't wind up with additional pavement, that's going to be a landscaped area of some sort, something more appropriate, that you wouldn't be just putting the drive-through lanes in and then hope a bank comes in.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's, a bank is a great tenant. Their leases, they hold a long time, that I know, but especially if you're a landlord, but brick and mortar banks are fading away right now, so.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
So getting back with the floor plans, I know you stated that none of the floor plans changed. The number of fixtures changed, like, in the bathrooms, like, did we reduce from 2 sinks to 1 sink?
You know what, I did not do a calculation on whether we increased the number of sinks.
Or decreased,
We did not
maybe.
increase the number of bathrooms,
Right.
but we may have extended a sink, and I can't answer that today. I can get that answer for you, though.
Okay. It's just more in particular with the 3 bedrooms, because I noticed there's only kind of a single bathroom with 1 sink, and
Most
2
likely that
bedrooms
was
have
not-
double sinks, so I wanted to make sure.
It's most likely that bathroom was not expanded.
Not expanded, but not decreased.
No.
Okay, any other questions from the dais? Okay, anyone from the public? No, heads are shaking no, so if there's no additional questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We could have Eric Keller on traffic.
Swear and testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
State and spell your name for me.
Eric Keller, Keller.
Could you provide the board with the benefit of your background and experience in traffic engineering?
Certainly. Vice President with Bowman Consulting at 54 Horse Hill Road in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey. I've been a licensed engineer for over 30 years. Oh, sorry. Usually don't get accused of being too soft-spoken, but thank you for that. I have appeared in numerous municipalities, provided traffic testimony. I've also appeared in Superior Court, and my license is in good standing.
Okay. Unless there's no objections, we will accept, and you may proceed.
Thank you. I'm really going to just go through briefly and expeditiously the comments in Section C of the T&M review letter. We will submit a revised traffic report that addresses and incorporates the comments that were contained in the original Mazer review, and that will include Saturday analysis. We had not done originally traffic counts on a Saturday. We'll use the data that was provided in the Dolan and Dean report for the adjacent development. The site plans, the changes to them don't affect any of the truck traffic. The types of trucks, frequency of trucks are a function of the size and character of the units. So at this point, there are no changes to that. We continue to provide adequate circulation through the site for those trucks. And of course, we'll hear any comments from the fire department on accessibility. The one point on DOT, we have submitted, we've been deemed complete, and at this point, I wish I could tell you where we are with the DOT, but numerous emails have gone unanswered. So
Shocking. Surprise.
I know, it's a surprise. It's just unbelievable that they're not responsive. So.
Never heard that before.
I think they're busy building a bypass.
And we're trying to have them build the bypass right the first time and incorporate the driveway that's been submitted, but they will do that until we have an approved project. And I don't know where that stands. So any requests for additional information, we will provide. We did provide, as required by the DOT, a duplicate copy of our initial submittal to the township clerk, or I think it was the township clerk. It was submitted to the township.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Just the one comment on section C5, and I know it's typical with the truck circulation plans. They're very jagged turning movements, and some of the movements on the plan show the wheel path going over grassed islands and up curbs.
We'll double check that.
Please look into that.
Sometimes when the CAD operators do it, they use the swept path.
Yes.
Which isn't necessarily where the wheel path is. We'll double check that, make sure that we're not driving over the curbs.
Perfect, thank you.
The one other comment, and this goes back to the Mazer letter, is there was a discussion about the timing of the 206 bypass and Mountain View Road signal time. The state's not going to do anything as far as, they have a plan, they have an approved plan, they're going to build that plan, and once the traffic all washes out, we figure out where people are going, if the township sees problems, you can reach out to the DOT and get ignored like we get ignored. But I think that there's no point in having a discussion today about timing changes until they actually open a bypass. So it's all speculative at this point. I'd be happy to have a conversation, but I'll probably get the same response I'm getting now, which is nothing. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
So responsive.
Yeah. Any additional comments from Deus? Okay. Public, want to talk about traffic? See heads shaking no, so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Those are the three witnesses that we intended on presenting this evening. I think that we've, established that the technical changes are rather de minimis regarding like the slight changes to the building location and footprints, the change to the building height on the residential buildings. So we believe, there's no new variance condition created. So we would ask that the board, approve the application for the amended site plan approval. I know that there's this, I'll say, still open issue regarding the commercial units, and perhaps it would be best if we just took a short break for a minute, and I can talk with my client, and we could see what's the best way maybe to address that issue going forward.
Okay, as long as the
Is that-
board's fine. 10 minutes,
Sure.
5 minutes?
Well, let's say 5, it usually ends up being 10 anyway, in my experience.
Okay, so it looks like it's about 5 of, so we'll reconvene at 10.
Okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Okay. And we're back, because I got the hand roll, so.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Appreciate giving us a little bit of time to talk. And if I could just explain we used the term phasing when we submitted the application, and maybe that was a poor choice of words. As the witnesses were saying that we would, there was a staging of construction sequence, and what we would do is, it's on the plans for the 3 buildings now. We want to be clear that that might not be what ultimately gets built, and we would have to come back in front of the board if ultimately something else is different, if there's a different footprint there. We do have brokers that are engaged here, and we have been advised that maybe, 1 building might ultimately be preferable to the 3-building layout that's shown here. So what we don't want to do is, build, the buildings as spec buildings and then they sit vacant. So that's why what we're trying to do is get tenants lined up that we know are going to take the space and that we can customize the space for those specific tenants. I'll say that if timing becomes an issue, we would agree to, either come back to the board or work whoever the board designates as the appropriate individual, to work through those issues. But we just want to be very clear and open as best we can with what our intention is going forward for that space, even if we don't have a 100% understanding as to how it's ultimately going to be laid out, because it may change depending upon the tenants.
So, I guess, kind of getting back to terminology, because you said that phasing might have been a bad choice in staging, so, so what are we looking to stage? Or,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kasuba's client and the township have been in this discussion regarding retail on the site now for probably close to 3 years. Yes, it's been 1 year since the board approved, but this took a while to get to the approval stage to get to where we are. I think the board is concerned, and somebody now, whoever used the magic word that they may not have necessarily intended to use, but did, which was phasing. I think the board would like some kind of commitment from your client as to either A, that no more than a certain percentage of the residential will be built without retail being built, or B, your client's back here within 12 months to explain how come there's no retail and what's the plan. But that the 14 buildings are not completed in any way, shape, or form, and I'm using the 14 because that's what's approved. And the 3 retail buildings that are currently configured as they are the plan that your client submitted for the approval by the board a year ago. The board nor the township said to them, we'd like 3 buildings in this configuration. That was what was proposed to the township. The township didn't say, oh my God, it's absolutely horrible, let's not do it that way. No one told them that they had to do 3, 1, 2. We understand that. We don't want the applicant to understand that they are being hamstrung to retail A, B, and C is currently on the plan for the purposes of getting retail. The objective is retail on that site. So my suggestion, folks, is a 50% build or 1 year back here, whichever comes first.
It's obviously a decision for the client, not for me.
You want to take another few minutes, another conversation? Go ahead, but I will tell you that having opened up the box, it's got to get closed.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll take another 5.
It's going to take 5 because...
On, and I got the finger, so.
Good.
Not yours,
Ready
yes.
to roll.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got none.
Thank you once again for giving me an opportunity to speak with the client. And, we really want to build the commercial space right the first time. So I think what we would like to do is propose, if I understood what Mr. Bernstein suggested, is to take the 1 year, agree if we're not going to proceed with building this space, but if we have somebody else lined up, we would come in for an amended application at that time. But regardless of what the status is with getting a tenant for the space, we would come back to the board in 12 months and explain the situation with the retail. If the board at that time says, proceed with building, we want the commercial space built, we would then proceed to build the commercial space at that time. I think directly linking the commercial space construction to the residential construction just gets problematic from, you know, a financing and building perspective. So we'd rather do it the way that I suggested, which I think is consistent with one of the options that Mr. Bernstein laid out.
Yes.
But I mean, we're not going to, these units aren't going to be built and occupied in a year.
Well, that's why I suggest, that's why I suggested, Mr. Kasuba, that your client have the ability to build up to 50% of the residential units, or come back to the board within a year and say, look, whichever comes first. If you build 50% and there's no retail, you come back, it may be less than a year. If a year from now, you've built 30% of the residential buildings and we still don't have commercial, you're back here to explain what it is. Because the rationale for getting 174 units was the retail. It wasn't an either or, it was an and. And you, as I said, you weren't part of it, but your client's well aware that that was what the deal was.
I just want to try to clarify, if I may, because I'm just not sure what you mean by build. You mean, you know, issuance of COs, issuance of building permits for the residential versus the commercial? I see one of my clients arrived next to me, so maybe he wants to ask a different question.
The issuance of building permits and construction on what is ostensibly no more than 87 of the residential units. That's half of, that's slightly under a half. Instead of 87 and a half, it's 87. That no more than 87 units get built, or a year, whichever comes first, and your client is back here if we don't have some, either an application for retail, or they went out and found 3 wonderful tenants who wanted the buildings configured exactly the way they are, and you've started building. Because what your client has told the board tonight is they're not sure when they're going to get retail, and what they need is approvals, and what the approvals are is to move forward and build the residential. And the board wants some kind of determination or some kind of time frame that this situation isn't going to end up with 14 residential buildings and a lovely grassy knoll along the bypass where retail is supposed to be.
And if I could just clarify that we would, it would be 87 units would be able to get building permits and COs. I assume the clubhouse, because that's typically we would
Building
build that
permits,
first.
COs, we'll see where we are. Building permits, and if the clubhouse is part of that, the clubhouse as well.
Do you want to state your, you should be.
Jack,
testifying.
We'll swear you in.
Swearing testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you state spell your name for me?
Sure. Jack Teicher, Tycher, with Canoe one of the applicants. I just to clarify if we're committing, well, I'll just take a step back. We have every intention of building the retail. We think it's amenity for our residents. We're not trying to say that we intend to have a grassy knoll in front. Based on our feedback from the brokers, this is not a downtown location where spec retail is usually as successful. This location tends to be more build to suit. That's the highest likelihood to get the best tenants that we consider amenities to our residents as well as to the town. So that was our approach because we thought it was most likely to be successful. It's not that we don't want to build the retail. So we understand that we need to build the retail. And if we're committing to that to be a condition upon which we just want as much time as possible to try to find build-to-suit opportunities. If the board requires us to build the retail, then so be it. I'd like to have as much time as possible. If it's still a requirement to deliver the retail, I guess I'm not sure.
We're not, my proposal is not that the retail is built. My proposal is that you and your partners don't go out and build this residential development while you're still out there looking for the retail partners you want
and lo and behold, 175 residential units are built and occupied, and you're still out searching for the kind of retail tenants that your constituents want. What I'm proposing is you can start building residential, no more than 50% of it, within a year. If you don't get it finished within a year, you come back. If you do get it finished, you come back when you're done with 50%, whichever comes first. And by no later than basically this point in time next year, we know where you are with the retail, because no one is suggesting you're not committed. We just want to see it happen. That's the rationale for this mixed-use inclusionary development zone that the township created in conjunction with you guys in order to get it built.
I think the significance of the question about the timing of permits versus COs is simply that we're agreeing to that. We understand that as a requirement, and again, it's not something we're trying not to do. But it's important for us to understand if we start to build buildings, and the buildings are not going to be built, these buildings are not going to be built 50%, all or nothing 50%. They'll be delivered one at a time.
I understand that, but what I'm saying.
So 1 year from now.
I'm saying that if you all somehow managed to build these one building at a time, and you're so good at it, and the weather cooperates so perfectly that you can get up to 50% of them done in a year, you come back.
No, I understand
If the answer is you don't have them done within a year, you're back in a year to tell this board
No, of course.
exactly where we are.
Nothing I'm asking contradicts what you're saying. I'm asking the question, what does build it mean? Build it means, as Rob said, build it means building permit to start building. It means that we can TCO 50% of them. Those are important distinctions. And what can, and 1 year. I just want to understand.
50% done, complete.
But I think we're agreeing.
With COs or without?
COs.
We want you to occupy the building.
Appreciate it. So, yeah, so 1 year from now, we're halfway through.
If not earlier.
If 1 year from now, we're halfway through, and we are unfortunately unable to secure tenants what we think will be the most successful for the best mix, we've TCO'd half the project. It is what it is. If the board wants at that point in time to build the rest spec, then so be it.
You'll come back in a year and you'll tell us your story, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Understood.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
Client's willing to agree to that condition?
Just
did. I want to make sure for the record.
I think he's the one that stated it, yes.
Okay.
I'm asking you, Rob, because
Yes,
for the record.
I understand. I appreciate the courtesy. So with I think we worked through what ended up being the most difficult issue here, a bit unanticipated from our end, but we certainly do appreciate the back and forth. From our perspective, we asked that the board approve the application, notwithstanding this whole phasing/timing issue. I should not use the P word anymore. But with the condition, I think we've addressed that concern. I think the issues regarding the kind of the modifications to the site plan, all those issues have been addressed. They're fairly minor in nature, and we've agreed to work with the board's consultants on the recommendations made in the review letter. So with those conditions that we put on the record, we asked the board vote to approve the application for the amended site plan approval, and happy to respond to any other issues if any.
You want to tap us out?
I'm sorry, I have one question.
Okay.
Just to clarify. Just to clarify, when we say 1 year from now, are signed leases with pending applications acceptable?
Building permits.
Building permits for the retail. Okay, understood.
Look, if you're going to build if you're going to build that retail, then building permits. I just get this strange feeling listening to this entire conversation. The chances are you'll be back looking for reconfiguration of that to a more, my words, quote suitable, close quote use, whatever that may be.
I have a quick question. If half is built, what's the affordable housing component figured into that?
So it'll have to be phased in.
Yes.
There is
As a
a,
ratio, or?
Yeah.
there is a formula in place at the state level that for every affordable, there's a certain amount of markets. That's already established.
The phasing is in the agreement because our friends at Fair Share, Mr. Kasuba's neighbors in Cherry Hill, would never have approved the agreement, not literally, but in the same time, would not have approved the agreement without the phasing plan, nor would the board.
Yeah, and just for clarity purposes, the reference to the non-residential space, it's not retail per se, it's commercial space.
Right.
Okay, it doesn't have to be retail.
Yeah, thank you. We always typically use retail as a shorthand, but it's really a broader uses than just strictly retail.
Okay. I'm just going to give one quick last bite at the apple to the public since we had an unexpected witness. And they're smiling, and I think they're just...
I think you want to go home.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we would be seeking a motion to approve the applicant's amended preliminary and final major site plan approval with the changes to the footprint of the several residential buildings and an increase in the clubhouse footprint on the property in the MUID-1 zone and the ASD overlay zone, to the commitments and agreements made relative to the reports of the various professionals, and the condition that no more than 50% of the residential units on this site will be built and occupied through TCOs within a year without some commercial development and/or plan coming back to the board by then, as set forth in the previous discussions. I'm going to make sure that it's in the transcript, Michael.
Okay. So with that, may I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any last comments? I'm hearing none, so let's go to roll call, please.
Mr. Scobah?
Yes.
Mr. Beason?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Hested?
Yes.
Committeeman Lapani?
Yes.
Mayor Delcor?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we have nothing left on the agenda, so I will entertain a motion for... Next meeting, well, okay.
Next week.
Because I'm not going to
December
be here, so I forgot about it. So.
Don't forget, next week.
Next week we'll be here for Brookhaven.
12th. Yes.
Okay, so there is a meeting next week on the 12th,
Yes.
7:30.
Yes.
So if anyone cannot attend, please let the planning office know as soon as possible, make sure we have a quorum. And then with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, and it looks like it's about 10:28. Good night, everyone.